Gabe, thank you so much for joining us bright and early. I don't even want to get into the differences of time zones and conversions and all the fun it took to schedule this, but thank you so much for joining us bright and early to start your day. I hope all is going
It's an
well for you.
absolute pleasure. No, it's good, man. It's good. No, thank you so much for having me. I watched a few of your episodes, and we just caught up through the Sprocketeer community, and I was keen. I've always loved just talking shop with you guys and people in the community. I think we need to do it more often.
I definitely think, whereas a lot of people say we don't need more podcasts, and I beg to differ. I think we do need more podcasts, but I think we definitely need more platforms to allow people to get their expertise out there and just be experts in the HubSpot space. Because I don't think there's enough people in our space really just sitting here and talking shop and sharing their wisdom. And for those who don't know, maybe this is your first time listening to a SprocketPod episode. My name is Cameron Collins. I'm a revenue operations strategist with RevPartners, community manager with Sprocketeer. We've got my co-host here, Mark Lerner, director of growth marketing at DealHub, and our guest, Gabe McCarthy. You are the lead strategist at Salted Stone. I'm going to go ahead and let you just tell everybody a little bit about yourself here.
Thanks, Cameron. I appreciate it, and good to be here, guys. I appreciate the invite. Again, my name's Gabe. I am, like Cameron said, I'm the lead strategist for the APAC region at Salted Stone. We're a global elite tier solutions partner for HubSpot, and we've been operating since 2008. I've been with the company for nearly 3 years now. Personally, myself, I've been working in and out of HubSpot for 10 years, something ridiculous like that, back when it was pathetic and not much. Now it's amazing. I also co-host and produce the Under the Hood podcast, which I think I recall putting up in the Slack channel, and you, Cameron, noted it, and you're like, "Hey, we have a podcast too. You want to come on?" I was like, "Hell yeah, sure."
Under the Hood. I like that title.
Thank you. Although search engines tend to think like when you put that in, it's to do with cars, so we don't do well when it comes to keywords. But
You can imagine what we like who finds us with the name of Rev Partners, and we have imagery of cars on our website being representative of the revenue engine and revenue operations. But yeah, there's definitely a little bit of crossover in there. Today we're
I
going to be
like it.
talking about, yeah, some really exciting stuff. I know we'll be talking about how to elevate yourself above and beyond being just a HubSpot admin. This is something that's really near and dear to my heart because talking to a lot of people in the community, I think that a lot of HubSpot admin and professionals in our space as CRM admin get stuck being just that, like being a HubSpot admin. And I think we've talked about in different iterations here of like, how do you be seen as a strategic partner? Myself being a revenue operations strategist, yourself being a lead strategist at Salted Stone. I'm like so keen to pick your brain and get your take on how somebody can be viewed above and beyond just like the person that's taking orders and the person that's updating HubSpot all day long. So with that in mind, I know we've got some show notes here, and I'd love to hear your thoughts when it comes to laying the foundation. Like, how do you set the tone for how you're going to engage with a stakeholder as an admin?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question. And yeah, look, I think that really ties in well with our main topic about being more than just the doer, the boffin in the background doing all the implementation. I think it's a lot more. And it all starts, like you said, with laying foundations. It's something throughout my career I've jumped in and out in between with my roles and tried to strike like this balance of being strategic and technical. There's been times where it's leaned far too in the technical route, in the technical lane, and then it's been too far in like the strategy lane. And I think over time I've finessed my process where it is in that middle range and laying foundation. So getting stakeholder buy-in. It's a mixture of so many skills that goes beyond just like being able to know what HubSpot does and how to implement tools correctly and set up things to best practice, how to onboard, how to migrate, all that good stuff, which is really important. But getting stakeholder buy-in and laying your foundations, there's so many other skills you have to hone within yourself to be able to set that up from the get-go and get that trust, that buy-in, and that confidence with the people you're working with. One of the keynotes I made here, which I don't know if you guys read, but I was like, because we wrote up some notes before this show, and I put down a stroke those egos, which is, I don't think any technology or anything can replace at any point. If it will, it's going to be a really weird world that we live in. But stroking the egos, and I'd say that with the nicest way, because people have earned their egos through the success as a stakeholder, right? But ultimately as well, you don't want to come in and be the disruptor. You don't want to be the blocker to their thought process. You want to add value. You want to bolt on to what their thinking is. You need to go, yes, that's great. But also, I think you could also add this, and I think this would even help even more. And they go, yeah, that's great. I'm glad. So you get on their level from the get-go, and that happens all the way at the very beginning. Like they always say, like the first meetings, you make the first impression, and they solidify like who you are and how you're going to engage, what your relationship's going to be. It's so true. But those are skills like rolled into people who work in the MarTech space that are far and few between. And I'm not faulting anybody for not being that way, but it is just something you have to develop over time through just like trial and error. And I still mess up sometimes, when I'm not perfect, but it's such a nuance to your role as an admin that I think a lot of people, like, they miss the point of that. I've worked with so many experts in the field who are just like way above my own comprehension of what they say they can do and how they do it with the technology. But like they come across as egotistical, or they come across as very impersonal, and it's hard to connect. That's what I was trying to get with there, is you as an individual still have to lay the groundwork and the foundation, even just at the relationship level. And then the foundations you lay on top of that, which is talking about how you put the strategy first. You get that trust, and you can put the strategy first and put the technology second. And that's that other point, that other level I wanted to get into, which is around putting the strategy first and around personas, buyer journey goals, and all that good stuff that like lays the groundwork for then what you're going to implement with the technology later. What do you guys think? Have you experienced similar things?
Yeah,
For sure.
you go first.
Yeah, I think that I've been through so many re-implementations or change in go-to-market strategies or complete reworking of how we're going to do personas or buyer journeys at different companies. I've gone through so many of those now that I think I've become a little jaded, because it sometimes feels like no matter how hard, and this may be different from the perspective of working with a client and you're an agency, but as an internal stakeholder admin at a company, and you're tasked with, okay, we need to re-envision the way our journey is or whatever. You go through these exercises and it's like pulling teeth, but then 6 months down the line, it happens. You have to redo that again because something changed, and then so you're back to square one. And so I guess my question is, how do you both, ensure that you have them think it through and think about strategy and journeys and all these things, but also build in the flexibility that, especially now where things are changing all the time really fast, that there's some way to build in a flexibility for change and tweaking without it being too fixed.
That's a really good point. That ever-evolving landscape is such a challenge. We saw last year with HubSpot introducing more updates to its platform than it's ever done in any years previous. I love it. Thank you, HubSpot. But also, Jesus, calm down, please, HubSpot. It's true, though, right? I think you have to be flexible in your own process, your own interpretation of things, too. You have to be open to persona information changing, to the journeys being updated and new touch points being added all the time. You have to be aware and aligned with goal setting as well, your goals and how they shift constantly. Stakeholders might say, actually, we're looking to get 20 SQLs per month as opposed to 10. You're like, oh, okay. Then that changes a lot of the stuff that builds up to that in the buyer journey that we mapped out. But I think if you leave yourself open to that change and that evolution, and also, like I said at the beginning, it's like setting the foundations at the relationship level to be a partner more than just a go-to person in the background. I think the best relationships and best business outcomes I've ever had was with clients who were just like, what do you think, Gabe, on every call? Do you think that's right? You know what I mean? And that's the CEO or the marketing manager or whoever you're dealing with as the main stakeholder, trusting you to give an informed opinion. They're not saying, I think it's this way and Gabe, you should make it happen this way. That relationship, the former, is what you really want And that's, I think, then allows you for that flexibility later on. But it's a transparent flexibility. It's like a shared, you're always being told new information when it comes so that you can get ahead of the curve. So I think that's quite important, if that makes any sense. So
No, it makes perfect
stringing
sense.
things together.
It's a conversation I'm having over and over again with folks, because it's like you're balancing these two things where you want to have a real process in place. It's always, as RevOps, we always talk about process is so important, and we don't want to put the tech before the process and all these things. And that it's okay, but I think especially now you look at some of the companies that I think were most impacted negatively by a very fast change in the market dynamics. It seems to me a lot of them were because they were fixed in their strategy and the way they did things, and weren't able to handle what was coming. And so it's an ongoing question I have, and like how to balance those two things. And I'm always interested to hear other people's opinions on that.
And something that Gabe mentioned, which I think is a really important call out, is people have earned their place wherever they may be, whether they're a VP of sales, VP of marketing. And so whatever level of ego, if we even want to call it that, may be tied to that role, like they've still earned that place. And one of the things that I learned very early on in my career is you don't always have to love the person, but you have to respect their role, right? It's being in revenue operations, we're in a very unique position where the VP of sales can be great at sales, but they also have sales KPIs and metrics to hit. Same thing for marketing, same thing for CS. And revenue operations oftentimes is the bridge between all of these roles and departments, whereas there may otherwise be friction. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts, Gabe, but I feel like in revenue operations and as a strategist, above and beyond just being a HubSpot admin, it is so important that you are the jack of all trades and the master of them all. It doesn't mean that you have to be an expert at every single thing related to sales strategy, but you have to be good at understanding sales methodology and marketing methodology and customer service enough to bridge all of these stakeholders with their competing interests.
Yeah. Oh, that's so true. And that's a really great point. There's no real easy like response I can give to that other than it just comes from experience. Like I started off like really low level, like my first ever job, like if we're talking like early 2000s, was like me working in a shop front for a fancy dress costume store. No joke. I was like 15, and I discovered very early on, like I could upsell people on buying a wig or buying a hat or by just talking to them. And that's customer service in a nutshell. You're not really being told that at the time. Your brain is, as a 15-year-old, is focused on far more important priorities at the time. You are learning that and soaking it in. And I think you have to go through the experience of those departments themselves. Customer service. I worked at what the equivalent of you guys have as like a Walgreens or a Walmart or something like that called Woolworths. Funny enough, they all begin with W. That's weird. I worked at that job for a long time, for 4 years, and I learned so much through sales there, through customer service, and through marketing about just like shelf placement and stuff like that, like getting a good user experience for people. I would put on the announcement like when we had a sale, and I would use the messaging I thought that would get people excited about this deal that we had, and you had to set up a competition or something to buy. There was all this stuff I was just doing organically. And then when I like started studying it and then putting pen to paper, and then eventually started actually working in the field and moving through junior roles up to where I am now, I carry that all with me. So I just often think that if you're going to learn departments, you have to engross yourself in those departments. And that's where that I think the harder RevOps is. You can sympathize with each department, and then therefore the connectivity you make between different departments through that methodology is far more seamless and far more agreeable. I think because then people say, oh, he's not trying to disrupt my way of working, he's trying to enhance it. And a lot of people just see the disruption.
Yeah, I very much align with that. And that's why one of the things that had been noted before our show here was eloquently put: strategy first, tech second. You have to obviously be great at HubSpot to be a good and to be a great HubSpot admin. So make no mistake, if you don't know how to build a sales pipeline, then you're probably in trouble. But you don't have to know how to physically build every single thing at the point of inception of an idea, right?
Oh
Learning
yeah.
the tech can be learned. There's a million things you can do in HubSpot, and I don't know that there's any experts that can do every single thing, right? A lot of our role is learning and adapting. But I'm really keen to hear an example that you've had of where strategy first, tech second was something that maybe a client could have or should have followed through on.
Yeah. No, I put this one down because I just thought it was a great example of you knew you were right. At least I knew I was right. The team I was working with knew we were right in our heart when we had these discovery calls with a client who we did the usual discussion and figured out, asked the important questions. And then we thought, okay, because I work very closely with the solutions team. Like you said, I don't do everything at Salted Stone when it comes to implementation. Like I work with the solutions team who are primarily situated within that pod, and they just sit there and do most of the implementation, but they do join on strategy calls, and I can do a lot of what they do, but I can't do everything. Like you said, I don't do everything, it'd be impossible. But like we got together in that discovery and thought, yep, it makes sense. We need to do growth strategy development as a foundational piece to begin with this client. And that's figuring out their personas, their buyer journeys, their goals, and building out a roadmap for the next 6 to 12 months to show them like how we should progress and where they should be investing more of their time in the future. And this is going to be a very low level cost entry. It wasn't going to be like tens of thousands of dollars. It's 10, 15 grand or something very small in Australian dollars, which is even smaller in American dollars. And it was going to be like, hey, man, we're going to tell you exactly what you're going to need to spend later on. And then from that, we foresee you needing to do then HubSpot onboarding potentially, and then other technical setup like integrations and automations and stuff for your service pipeline and stuff like that. All he heard was, oh, HubSpot onboarding and technical setup, that sounds great. Let's go that first. I want to see the data first. I want to see the setup first. I want to see if the technology works first. And this is another example of having to deal with an ego and having to deal with a stakeholder who's earned their right to be in that position, run that company, whatever it is that they're doing. Ultimately, you can keep banging your head against the wall with them to say, no, you should do it this way. But ultimately, we had to fold with their decision. And then we saw, as we did the tech implementation, it actually wasn't going to work at all. There was, I won't say exactly what it was for their own confidentiality, but there were things that were exposed that if we had done the strategy first, they would have saved so much money down the track. And we would have figured out exactly the kind of tech they would have needed versus the one that they chose to invest with first. So it's a perfect example. A shiny tool, I wanted to use it because I know a lot of my competitors are using it. Let's put it in and just get it to work. And then we'll figure out the strategy later. Whereas if you think about it, like HubSpot, even at the most capable level of professional, you're paying a few $1,000s a month just to use the tools. Even if you do set up to begin with, you're not going to start using them all to begin with. So why not do the strategy first before you even sign up? Anyway, that's just my little rant for today. And I just want to get off my chest. But it ties into the whole strategy first, technology second point that I think we're getting at.
And
Yeah.
and just to echo that sentiment, and I think we could probably both sit here and grab a couple pints and talk for hours about similar experiences, but I think there are probably things that many of us who are in the HubSpot space have experienced, whether or not you're in, whether or not you would consider yourself a revenue operations professional. But a similar example that I can echo is somebody who said, I want you to build something. I don't want to worry too much about strategy. And they said that they wanted
Wow.
to be able to, yeah, if go ahead and like this if you've ever heard that one before. But yeah, they wanted us to essentially just build a sales pipeline that when it went to closed one, duplicated the deal in their sales pipeline. And they didn't want to deal with having a second like upsell pipeline. They were like, we just want it to be simple. But because they didn't really go through the strategies of having an upsell pipeline or changing the sale owner, but got into this whole mess of what happens if we need to reassign it from the original salesperson to now the account manager. And so there was like this whole mess of things that just didn't work because ultimately they didn't want to sit down and take the time to say, okay, what would be best long term? And it was, here's what I want, here's what I think we need, just build it. But that's, I think, the
Wow.
difference between being a HubSpot admin that just sits there and will otherwise be an order taker all day long, which is, if you have evolved beyond that in your career, then congratulations. But if you're hearing that and you're thinking, wow, that sounds a lot like my day to day, like I'm just told to build things, then the
Mm,
challenge I would have for listeners is to sit there and think about, how can you encourage stakeholders to listen to strategic input that you have? And the flip
mm,
side is, if you're a stakeholder, if you're a leader and you don't trust your HubSpot admin with strategic advice, then I think it might be worth evaluating who you have on your team and how you can elevate having people who you trust who can give strategic advice that you would listen to. I think it's
agree.
important on both sides of the equation that everyone feels comfortable with the advice being given and the advice being followed.
I think it's also like you as an individual, like you need to be constantly questioning. And I think if you show that you're questioning, it shows your in investment in your how you are engrossed yourself within that person's own plight, their own needs, showing that you're that connected to what they're saying by asking those questions. I think they tend to respect you more and want to hear you out more and more. And also goes same for your colleagues and your peers, right? Other team members will want to have you speak up and ask those pertinent questions, because for my example, I might go in similar with what you were saying, Cameron, around your example around a buyer pipeline that we're building out, and there needs to be a separate one because upsell ones will then sit in this one, and for obvious reasons for reporting later on make a lot more sense and not create this false economy of putting everything into one pipeline. It's just not best practice. I can say that in a meeting with my experience, but then having someone pipe up as well to back you up in that conversation with that stakeholder is really valuable to go. And also, Gabe, on top of your point, considering X, Y, Z, that collaborative exercise and that way to speak up as a HubSpot solutions expert is invaluable to that process of connectivity with your stakeholders and your clients. Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on that point you made, because I think it's truly important to always speak up, always be heard, and don't necessarily worry about being right all the time. That's why you just ask questions, I think. So that's my point.
Yeah, I think I love that. I would say one of the things that I've noticed as somebody who can sometimes feel a little shy, not wanting to necessarily quote unquote bother people, one of the things I've noticed is that if I am able to look at the existing tool set, the existing machine, and go in and read the notes and look at the way things are being done, I'm actually able to infer a lot, and even sometimes more than I can get an answer about in terms of the way people work. I've found that if you ask somebody a question about how do you do things today, sometimes they might give you the answer of how they wish it was, as opposed to how it actually. So they might say,
It's
"Oh
true.
yeah, we do. It's really smooth, whatever." And then, but you go in and you look at if they have an existing CRM, you look at what's happened, or you look in Slack or whatever. You're able to pick up the breadcrumbs and understand, okay, it's not really exactly what it is today. As an internal stakeholder, so not in my own company and currently and in previous companies, I've done this a lot to actually help identify pain points, maybe outside of my wheelhouse in other parts of the company where I actually might be able to provide value, and then present, hey, I think we have a challenge here, and if we take this strategy and maybe do something like this, I think it can provide additional value. I always feel like I'm Sherlock Holmes when I'm doing that.
So you should, my friend. So you should.
So one thing that we oftentimes end up talking about in our podcasts, as one does in 2023 and 2024, is AI. And I know that we have talked a little bit offline about the concept of AI burnout, and conversely, how solutions are always going to be human led. And so that's something I really love your take on, Gabe. Obviously, I think that anybody who is in our role who has used ChatGPT has found a way to, for example, grab value. And I know that there are many programs outside of ChatGPT, but what's your take on going above and beyond this black and white thinking of AI is taking our jobs or it's not? and really looking at the human-led aspect.
Yeah, it's a really good point to make. And I know Mark has got a lot to say about AI burnout. I'm keen to hear his rant on that because I feel like we're all feeling it. And I love to hear other people's thoughts on it because I feel like I just talk about it way too much. But it is a buzzword, right? So you have to talk about it. But I think in talking about it so much, it overshadows the human aspect that is far more important and far more valuable to the longevity of what we do, if that makes sense. Because let's talk a bit to the community. Everyone on here, we met through LinkedIn and Sprocketeers and the Slack channel and all that kind of stuff. And we learn from each other. I'm stealing things, not stealing, but being inspired by others' stuff that they put out constantly. But that's good. And I want to contribute that too, because I want people to just know what I'm doing and tell me if I could do it better, and not necessarily steal it and think it's great. But you learn so much through that, and learning through like people. And I just want to call out some awesome people out there. Christine Romero, like 100%. She's a beast in what she does. Like, I'm always inspired. She actually came to Australia recently and then she messaged me afterwards. I was going to message you to catch up, but I just forgot. I got busy. And I'm like, I was going to do the exact same thing, man. I'm sorry. It was, we were both, damn. Oh, next time. But people like Kyle, obviously, Shadab Khan, and Will Smith, I got there as well. Not the Will Smith from Fresh Prince, but Will Smith Cameron. Legends. I've learned so much from these guys and so many others because they all come from such interesting backgrounds and have different takes on things. And it's that culmination, that mixture of different opinions, different points of view that makes things interesting. All those contributions, they inspire you to do something similar but different in your own way. It's like how art. Now I'm comparing what we do to art. Jesus. Okay, but
Not that far off. No,
it's that. Yeah, no, thanks, Mark. I appreciate it because like it is a little bit like that. It's a completely like different direction of art, but it's like the same process. You get inspired by someone's work and then you try to one up them or do something similar or whatever it might be. And you often reference the people that you spoke to. So I think when it comes to AI and how that then fits into the mix, I feel like it's similar to how ChatGPT started up. Like all it could do at the time it launched was pulling information from all of internet history up until 2021 or something. I think it was. I can't remember exactly the year. And it really started to blow up like at the beginning of 2023. Even then, it's just missed a whole gap of 2 years of stuff we've developed. And so it's limited. It is a linear tool that is restricted and limited in its own capability, but we're not. We're actually able to keep growing without needing a computer to tell us to do that. And I think that is inspiring in itself to us. And it should elevate ourselves and make us go, the AI can't really ever replace what we do because it's always going to be task driven. We're creative driven, right? And we keep pushing ourselves and no AI can actually keep up with that. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah.
Mark.
I think I've come to a place today where I never say never. I have no idea what comes down the pike. I can tell you that based on the current technology and the way they're doing things now with the transformers and everything like that, it's not going to. Creativity is frustratingly uniquely human. And I say that because I spent months trying to build an internal tool to essentially write cold emails, right? A simple use case. And they all ended up sounding the same. And so I tried every which way to prompt those pieces of ChatGPT that I think all of us are red flags now. Like it starts the way every ChatGPT article starts, the kind of metaphors it uses, and I just couldn't prompt it out of that mode. And I couldn't train it to be the kind of random that humans are, because humans have a certain sort of randomness that is flawed, right? It's not based on rules. And it got to the point where I was having like this existential crisis where I was like, I had assumed that humans were all basically the same. And it really is, and I just had to put it away. And I don't really use ChatGPT for content generation anymore because I find it so frustrating to get it just all sounds the same to me. What I do think it has done, and it continues to do, is make the user 10x more productive, at least if they're using it right. If there is a human intermediary having the co-pilot essentially on your screen, for me, it's been life-changing. Like, I have been able to do things without needing other people's help that I could have never done before, whether that's APIs or SQL queries or whatever that I would have never been able to do before because I have this app, this resource. And I think we say, oh, is it going to take our jobs? AI is not going to become Mark or Cameron or whatever, but Mark or Cameron using an AI is likely to take someone's job. And what I mean is that somebody can, with the help of AI, can probably do the work of two people without it. And therefore, it's likely, we've all seen the kind of layoffs in the tech space. We've all seen it. And you read it's AI, but it really can't be. Like, there's no way that's true. But I think it's likely that there's an expectation and probably happening that there's more productivity per person with these tools at their disposal. And so that's a long way of saying that humans are unique and flawed in a very human way that it just AIs can't be. And with what they have today, I don't think that's going to change. And I think anyone who's in the guts and trying to use AI in these different ways knows it. We've all reached the limit of the creativity that AI can do. So I don't worry about one day ChatGPT becoming sentient and wanting to set up. It's just not going to happen. Not unless there's some sort of massive step change in the way it functions. So that's my take.
That was beautiful, Mark. I love that. I was right with you on all those points, man, because it's so true. Like, over market saturation at the beginning, especially for AI, and I think it's still going, and people are just getting tired by that whole rhetoric as well. It's really taking its toll, like not just on us, but also like on just nearly every kind of role out there. And one revelation I had while thinking about this podcast last night, whilst trying to get to sleep, was I was like, you know what it is? It's almost like we're getting a bit existential here and a bit whatever. But what you're talking to, the nuance of people, Mark, like that's something you can't ever replicate in an AI. Or AI can never replicate that. And no human is ever really going to want to just deal with that. Like, they're always going to deal with a human at the end of the day, like for the things that they value, watching media like TV, getting seen by a doctor and talking to a lawyer, all that kind of stuff. There's plenty of examples out there. You know, AI can't replace the nuance that comes with the sympathy that you get from a lawyer versus one that might be an AI lawyer. The AI lawyer is just going to tell you have X, Y, Z options, pick them. The lawyer, I don't know why I'm going with lawyers, but like the actual lawyer, the human lawyer, is sympathizing, going, I understand, look, I'll try and talk to the judge and see what we can get you. You know what I mean? There's that nuance that we're never going to be able to replicate. I just want to cover that, like, slimming down of your task, though, in terms of what we do and everyone else does, that AI then replaces. Yes, of course, that's going to happen. It's just natural. It's like how email just replaced normal mail, like snail mail. It was a natural progression. There's just going to be stuff like that is natural. And it's just going to make things that we did back then irrelevant. But that slimming down of your tasks and that slimming down of your roles and responsibilities is just going to evolve your job, but it's also going to slim down you. And what I mean by that, it's going to like expose you and make you like almost a little bit like more naked to the people that you're dealing with, in terms of like, all you can then rely on is your skills, your true self, the sum of what makes you. So that should be a motivation for yourself to just be better, to really hone in on your talents, your skills, and find what you're passionate about, because then it's just obvious to you then, right? If you're doing something where you're not, and don't blame the AI, because the AI isn't the problem, it's you at the end of the day, where you're in the role and you're just not happy. It's not to do with the AI, it's to do with you, man. So anyway, we got really deep on this, but I just thought it was just an interesting point.
It really makes you confront what makes something human, what makes something what is intelligence, and then you go down this rabbit hole, and it can fake it pretty well, but after a while, and maybe initially you're like very impressed, you may not even know, but if you prod just a little bit, it becomes very clear. And it's just, I don't have the technical words verbiage to describe what it is that I've seen and how I know this, but I've been doing it for a while now and just continually hit the same wall, that it's very clear that it's not this ghost in the machine that's thinking on its own. It is, to distill it down to it's just guessing the next string, letter, whatever, is a little simplistic, but it's not that far off. And I think we should embrace it. There's a level of democratization of knowledge that this is providing that you'd be really missing out on if you didn't take it, but also to not think that this is going to be the silver bullet that changes everything, or that can solve everything, because it can't.
Well,
That's really well put.
and I would add that in the greater context of talking about AI, I think that there's a difference between how companies think people want to use AI and then the practical usage of it. So I think an example of where, and this is not related to HubSpot, but an example of where I think companies think AI can be helpful is, I don't know if everyone has seen it, but at least in my LinkedIn account, there's the ability to summarize a post. And so I can have at the click of a button AI or LinkedIn or whatever is happening on the back end, right? But have it is give me the thumbnail version of whatever somebody posted about. But how much value do I really get from taking what somebody's giving me on LinkedIn and then making that even more distilled, right? Like, why is that going to be the reason I now pay for premium? Like, why do you think I want and need this? Now, maybe there are people who find that useful and find it helpful, but speaking personally, I think that it's just like a funny example of where companies are probably excited to roll out something that they can put the term AI on, and then, but our consumers asking for it. And if we take that back to HubSpot, look at ChatSpot, which I know is still a work in progress. And we did a little ChatSpot versus in a previous episode and pitted against ChatGPT, and that was fun. It is a thing that exists, and if anybody from HubSpot is listening to this, then know that we are rooting for you to make ChatSpot an awesome thing that everybody wants to use. I certainly want that. But if we look at an example of like how it exists today, the ability to go in and say, tell me what this report means, right? Even if it did that perfectly, and that was something that I couldn't come to the conclusion of on my own, that is a very surface level use. The extension of that, which is, I think, if we go a little deeper to what you were both alluding to, the extension and the next step of that would be, okay, based on this report, revamp all my lifecycle stages and rebuild my entire HubSpot instance because of the fact that we have a close loss rate of being able to tell HubSpot, this is what I'm seeing, this is what I want to happen. Now go rebuild it. That would be AI that takes people's jobs. And I think, whether we're talking about ChatSpot or every other program out there, we are so far from these programs being able to make that level of connectivity that it's certainly helpful, right? To be able to say, tell me what this report means. Or the use case that I actually enjoy is the flip side of that, right? I create a workflow and then I click, tell me in the description, provide a description of what this workflow does. And it saves me 5 minutes of having to like type out the description. Yeah. So
that's the
cool.
stuff you want though, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's cool. That's what we want. And so is that going to take somebody's job because I couldn't type a description? No, but it's awesome because it saves me the brain power and now I can focus on other areas of my job.
Yeah, it's also those value points. That's a perfect example around just asking a workflow to interpret and give a description of it using AI. Great. That doesn't, if you spend more time doing that, it's not necessarily going to bring more value to what you just created. Like it might do depending on the level of client or whatever. That's another story. But ultimately, like you want to be then putting back to your clients and the work that you do, what is actually providing the value, the nuance, especially what Mark was alluding to, like with the whole trying to develop out the cold email stuff that you were doing. There's too much nuance to that. Even if you had a program that's like, HubSpot's come out with AI onboarding. Okay, I'll get the standard package, please. And then you click a button and then it's done. Even if you did that, there's not one size that fits all. There would have to be us going in and then tidying up A perfect example of that is like HubSpot doing CMS migrations, right? They're stopping doing that now, by the way. That's all we're going to stop. I don't know if you guys have heard about that, but they're going to stop doing CMS migrations and they're actually going to stop. I don't know if I'm allowed to say it. Maybe I shouldn't. Anyway, I'm just hearing things. It's all, but what they're definitely doing is stopping CMS migration. I can say that. And they're doing that like purely because they're not seeing the value in spending the time of migrating like a WordPress site to a Hub CMS platform for their own sake. They'd rather put that into partners. Great, cool, we'll do that. But then it puts a challenge on us to find a slimmed down way of doing that. So then we have to bring in AI in some ways to do that because the bar that already set for the migration was really low. So we have to either just match it or be slightly above. But coming back like to the onboarding example, you can't bring that in there without then having a partner or somebody as a solutions expert looking at the system and going, yes, this would work in theory, but it doesn't meet all the nuances for like your sales process or your marketing to sales process, like the MQL, SQL stage. Like it doesn't fit your lead scoring at all. There's all these things that's just going to be like red flags everywhere. And it's just going to be us going and putting out fires. Yeah, I just imagine that. So no, put that one down, put that one down. You know what I mean? That's what it's going to be, which creates a different, again, it's like an evolution of our job. It just creates a different way of working, which if that's the way it goes, cool, but we're still going to be in the job, right? It's just going to be an evolution of what we do.
I think the use case where AI has the most value that I've seen in the context of like CRM and sales is the basically auto notes in the CRM for meetings and the analysis and summary of calls and having that on the record. To me, that is like the ultimate use case. It's super valuable and it is, I think, relatively speaking, simple. I heard from Yamini had a LinkedIn post recently when she was talking about how internally how they were using AI at HubSpot, and she made an allusion to this because Gong and it has a pretty robust way of doing this right now. But that has super value because you talk to a sales rep, the thing they always get in trouble for is, did you update Salesforce or did you update the CRM? It's like the kind of the joke that what's that guy corporate bro he always makes, updating the CRM. That's like a quintessential AI use case and it can be done really well. Those are the things that I think people probably want, as opposed to like, why would I care about a summary of a LinkedIn post? I'm following someone on LinkedIn because I want their opinion in the way they say it, not just the bullet points.
And to really tie this back to our central theme, right? We could sit here and Mark will get into another rant next week on AI. I know it. I feel it in my bones. But to tie back to this theme of how do we elevate ourselves above and beyond being just a HubSpot admin, right? Because ultimately, being a HubSpot admin, that's something that I think we should carry that with pride. But I think you should always strive to be valued as a strategic partner, not just seen as a technical person. And so, whether we're talking about AI, if we're talking about HubSpot Academy, like any type of tools that are enablement tools, I think that the key summary of everything we've been talking about for the past few minutes is to like really just go out there and use everything that you have at your disposal to be better at your role. So, AI is not a crutch, it's something that enhances us. Same thing with the HubSpot Academy. A lot of people complain about the HubSpot Academy and how it's not like technical enough or like whatever, it doesn't compare to Salesforce Trailhead. Fine. But in my opinion, these are all tools to help us grow and we have to use every single one. So HubSpot Academy on its own isn't going to get you 150%, but it is a tool in the arsenal to be an awesome HubSpot admin. Same thing with AI, same thing with all these other enablement tools.
I agree with that HubSpot Academy point, Cameron, because I think it's very good and substantial. And I think because I am a creative type, I take it as like a foundation, a starting point for then my creativity to flourish. I would not want HubSpot Academy to force feed me how to do everything, because that then, I don't know, it just limits you in your thinking and puts things into a box. And I think that's what HubSpot's going for, is we want to allow, again, the nuance of you, the HubSpot admins, to interpret what it means to onboard Marketing Hub or Sales Hub, how to set up a good automation, how to set up lead scoring. And again, I don't think they could really cover every point. when it comes to that in a way. So it's a fruitless endeavor if they did. But that's why we have experts out there like Christine and Kyle and Shadab and everyone else just going out there saying, hey, I just did this thing. Comes back to our other topic about community. That's what you should lean on because that's where the most value is.
Yeah. And just to really double down, like I think the HubSpot Academy is really great at what it does, which is teaching you the fundamentals to be great at your role. It's not going to teach you every single thing about data architecture. It is continuously evolving, and I know it's become far more substantial even over the past 6 months. I think they've tripled the amount of courses in there, but they could have 100 courses. There's still going to be more and more to learn, right? And so, just going back to the key, like if you want to be valued as a HubSpot admin and above and beyond that as like a real strategist, like don't rely on any one source. Don't rely on just the HubSpot Academy. Don't rely on just AI to be your crutch. Go out and find mentors. So, like we talked about community, like connecting with people in the Sprocketeer community, connecting with people on LinkedIn, and like actually learning from the experts that are doing the role well. That's my tangent.
Good one. And yeah, it's agreed. Something in there I wouldn't agree with.
Mark, anything else on AI before we wrap?
No, but I just want to comment on the Telecaster in the background because I've just been, it's just so shiny. Did you clean it before? Did you like wax it? How do you get it to be so shiny?
Telecaster?
Yeah, the guitar over your left shoulder.
Oh,
It's just a
for some
Zoom
reason,
background.
yeah, no, it's real. Yeah, I don't know. I just polish it.
Yeah.
But I'm more of an acoustic player. That one's a bit more for show. I
Oh,
only pick it up now and again when my child isn't at home because it disturbs him. But that one, yeah, I'm more of a player of. I do enjoy just playing for myself acoustically. I picked it up during COVID lockdown and just got really into it. So just been doing it for about 3 or 4 years now. And yeah, it's fun. I love guitars. They're beautiful. I've always wanted to play one. And now I have one, or I have three. Actually, there's one over there. That's my really cheapo practice one I first got. Now I don't play it because comparatively, if I play that, I'm like, God, that sounds like garbage compared to that.
Yeah, I started playing when I was in like 6th grade and took a few lessons and gave up. And then we bought our kids these like mini guitars, and I'm the only one. And then I just play them. So I like walking around the house playing these like mini classical guitars for hours. I'll just like, get totally caught up and forget. But yeah,
I'm
Speaking of
already
awesome,
seeing, yeah, I was going to say, I'm already seeing guitars in guitar stores that would be suitable for my son, like soon. He's only 9 months.
speaking of awesome, because that guitar truly is awesome. I want to go ahead and give you an opportunity to plug the Melbourne Hug. We have the link in the show notes, but go ahead and tell everybody about that event coming up.
Thank you. I appreciate the shout out because this is so Melbourne or Melbourne, as Americans say, it's totally fine. We've got a hug coming up. We've just been made hug leaders for Melbourne. We were hug leaders for Sydney for a long time, but we handed that over to another agency and we've taken over the Melbourne one. And it's been closed up since COVID. Like there hasn't been one since then. So now we've taken over and we're relaunching the first one on the 6th of March. So if you are a Melbourneite and a HubSpot user and want to meet myself and our CEO, Tony, we'll be there. There'll be links to it for our landing page as well as the HubSpot landing page. So yeah, 6th of March, free food, free drinks. We're going to give away an ebook there with like our solutions team's 24 hacks for HubSpot that we've developed over many years. So it's a really invaluable ebook that was handwritten, not by AI, it's actually handwritten. And yeah, you'll get that at the event if you attend. So it's going to be awesome. Really looking forward to doing that.
That's awesome. And I'm jealous that I am not in Melbourne.
You got it, man. You got it.
I'm jealous that I'm not there and won't be able to attend. Mark, I'll speak for you and say that you're jealous as well, as are probably many of our listeners who are not over in Australia. But for those of you who are or aren't able to attend the hug, make sure you check us out in Sprocketeer. All three of us are in the Sprocketeer community, which, if you're not familiar, is the largest independent community of HubSpot admin. So if you're not already a member, go ahead and join us over there, chat with us. We have a ton of threads and talk about HubSpot stuff all day long. Also, check out the HubSpot Admin Hug hosted by Deanna Gloff and Kyle Jepson. If you haven't been a member of one of those events, they are hosted on Tuesdays at 10 a.m. Central Standard Time here in the US. That is a digital event, so I encourage you to check it out and level up your game as a HubSpot admin. And finally, you can check out our previous episodes on YouTube and on Spotify. Links in the show notes below. Gabe, thank you so much for joining us. It was an awesome chat. Mark, as always, lovely co-hosting with you. Thank you, everyone, and Sprocket on. Bye now.